Welcome, everyone, to What the Force. I'm Marie-Claire Gould, and
I'm Missy.
And we are following Willow. This is our metamythical deep dive into the show Willow. And today we're going to be talking about Chapter 4, or The Whispers of Nockmaar. This episode was so good.
So good.
I had sort of Willow dreams last night, specifically about the throne room, which is really fascinating. I'm not 100% sure why it was that, but it definitely has created quite a stir in my subconscious, and I can't wait to deep dive into it. Just a reminder to like and subscribe to keep up with everything that we're going to be releasing for the show. And of course, a reminder as we dig into our comments and questions for Missy and I to click on that link in the liner notes if you have any questions about this episode or anything else to do with the show that you would like to ask us or comment on. The comment we have today is from Izzy. So I'm actually going to narrow it down just to a part of her comment, although I did love all of the comments, and thank you very much to everyone who submitted them. Izzy's comment is actually quite a long one about the Hastur bloodline, the infection, which we're going to get into. Izzy specifically wanted to know about the scar that looks like the symbol on the book at the start of the show.
Mm-hmm.
And also the ring around his neck is his brother's. And I can confirm the ring is his brother's. They flash to his brother's ring at the end of that moment later on. And also the symbol on the book, although not the same, because like pausing it and everything, is sort of from the same, I guess, thought structure.
Mm-hmm.
It has the same workings into it, and we're going to get into it. But it definitely shows a symbolic connection between these two things. The scar is probably related to either what has happened to him, or it is perhaps what has caused it to happen. Because where the ring hangs is kind of above his chest, where the scar is. So that symbolically shows that those two are interconnected. Any thoughts, Missy?
I think it was just interesting because the second, we've talked, of course, about seeing his scar the whole way through, but we can only see little bits of it, we couldn't really see it well. And so I think, once we got a good look at it, like my first thought, even without going back and comparing a side by side, was, okay, well, that looks like the cover of the book. And the way I interpreted that was that is a visible sign of his link to dark magic and this destructive magic. And this is why he feels tainted. And, why he tells them when they're discussing whether or not to simply just kill him, he's like, yeah, you might have to, because I don't think I can come back from this. So he really doesn't, believe that he can be redeemed or cleansed of this darkness. So that was how I read it.
Absolutely. All right, let's get into mythic inspirations, parallels, and themes.
So much to talk about today.
All right, let's start out with the big one, which shout out to Angel, who tweeted me and said that we called that back when I said that Nockmaar sounded like Nightmare. Mm-hmm. And there's a lot of that sort of theme in the story. But let's talk about Shadow to start. Shadows themselves, from a Jungian archetype perspective, are part of our subconscious. They're part of us. They fit these archetypical structures. They come from the collective unconscious and allow us to have, a cognitive structure to how we think about the world and interpret it, but in the symbolic dream language that sits in our unconscious. Is part of what we do as humans is we give these shadows away to people, freely given. So you're sitting there out in the world and you have cast out a particular shadow. It could be something like a witch on your own mother. She's not a witch. She loves you, but occasionally her witch face shows up. And it's because you have put that piece of yourself onto her. You have projected it onto her. And part of our job as humans, as we grow and learn to cope with our own psychology and the things that we're dealing with, is that we can't actually see our subconscious directly. So this is one of the only ways that we can work through the things that are bothering us, is by projecting it out onto other people so we can genuinely see it. There isn't a subconscious mirror that exists. So Jungian psychology and, of course, poet and author Robert Bly talk about the shadow as, when we project it out there, there are ways to reintegrate it into ourselves so that we can then be more whole. Because it's actually quite exhausting to have pieces of ourselves floating out there in being held by other people. But once you can take that darkness back into yourself in a more orderly fashion, it actually gives you more energy, more creativity, and you as a person become more whole. Is that quick?
That was such a good little summation. I love it.
Any other thoughts on Shadow? Shadow is so important to this episode. It had to be the top one.
Yeah, I mean, you'll hear as we go through, but basically this entire episode is about all of these characters confronting their shadows. Now, interestingly, not all of them integrate their shadows successfully by the end of the episode.
Some of them just face it and run away in a way.
Some of them sort of like face it and then back away from it. And that's all you get. So not everyone does, but it is clearly the theme of this entire episode, and it's really setting us up for the second half of the season.
I also think that it's really important to acknowledge there's a little bit of a piece that sometimes people misunderstand about story and about life, right? So we have ourselves, our own personal shadows, which drag behind us like a shadow or like a smelly garbage bag. I think Rob Bly, because it's like your baggage, right? You put stuff in there and you don't look at it. That the only way that you can actually go through it is by taking it out, projecting it out there, sometimes on fictional characters, and then you lose your mind on the internet about Ben Solo. But not always, right? And so then if you're ignoring it, if you push it down, it becomes more smelly and gross. That's our personal shadow, but there's also community shadow. There's also country shadow. There's also like humanity shadows. And it is just who we are. And we as a collective also have these shadows that we might be ignoring. And so just like that, the world Willow lives in, Anduin, also has a shadow. And it, because of the character of Elora Danan, it ends up being part of her.
Yes.
So that's really very Lucas to have something that is micro on a personal level also be a macro level thing. And we'll get to that. It's good.
Ugh. This episode just, I can't express how much I loved it. It just really gave us everything. It really did.
A big theme continues: consumption.
Oh, yeah.
It's everywhere.
Oh, yeah. A lot of eating here, and it's very important.
A lot of eating. We'll call it out when we see it, but it's important for you to pay attention to this theme as you're watching the show going forward. I think it just is such a consistent theme we've seen that I think it really adds if you have your consumption lenses on. And so if you haven't heard us talk about it on an episode before, it's fire. It's the worm threatening to devour. It's eating things.
Yes. And it's the infection spreading.
Yeah. It's like how, diseases can infect and consume and kill and things like that. Yeah. Oh, good stuff. The next one is femme wisdom, or all of our Powerpuffs face their matriarchs.
Yeah. All the Powerpuff Girls have some serious mommy issues. They have a lot to deal with in this episode. And everybody's meeting mommy.
I actually tweeted out to John K. Thank you for including mother's wisdom in there. And he liked the tweet.
Oh, that's so great. Well, and also just in general, it's not even just the fact that they include mother's wisdom. It's the fact that obviously we've talked quite a bit about the loss of the mother in Star Wars and how often this happens. And on the one hand, it has a huge impact on those characters. On the other hand, it's very common for the narrative to sort of forget or erase those mothers after they're gone. Like it just doesn't bring them up again. So even though you as the audience might be like, I can see how that impacted this character, they're not specifically focusing on it in the text a lot of the time. And so what I liked about this episode of Willow was they did focus on it in the text, how the loss of the mother and the separation from the mother is impacting each of these characters. And to your point from earlier, the entire world.
Yep.
So there was no shying away from it. There was no glossing over it. It was up front and center. It was arguably the primary conflict here.
And we learned some more Willow-esque mythology about the mothers and the grove. Not that we know much about that yet, but it does certainly present what we've always felt about this world Willow lives in, is that it does kind of come from a very femme archetypical goddess structure, right?
If you have not listened to our episode about the film itself, I do recommend going back and listening to that because, long before we really knew what was going to happen in this show, that was one of the primary things we called out about the 1988 film was, oh my gosh, everything is femme archetypes. Everything is about the mother. So
everything. Yeah. And that's a good segue to talk about the heroine's journey.
Yeah. Bam. There you go.
Where we are. And I think it's really important to say we get, especially for Elora Danan, who is our hidden goddess being revealed right through her journey. We have both the initiation and descent into the goddess, which is very similar from a Joseph Campbellinian perspective to going into the underworld, catabasis, or, entering the belly of the whale. It has a same sort of psychological aspect to it in that you are going into the deep, dark recesses of your own subconscious. But specifically with women, and femme archetypes, there's a sense of abandoning the masculine patriarchy that has not worked for you. And that's really, really important because you end up trying to seek wisdom that you've been told was wrong in some ways, or you were told was not as valuable. Clarissa Piccola Estes would say that it's the ancient bone wisdom, the wisdom of our foremothers. And that's what you find in the deepest, darkest, moistest place of ourselves.
And I love how literal that was in this whole episode. We'll talk about it as we go through, but yeah, they're deep within this castle. It's covered in skeletons. It's dirty, it's dark, they go into dungeons, so there's they made it incredibly literal with this castle, and I really loved it.
And as many people go through this stage, they're gonna feel psychically dead. So if you've entered into a period of time and you're like, I don't know what's wrong with me, I just feel like everything is off. Nothing is working. I can't get anything to jive. It's actually because you're in that entering into the death part of your life cycle. And once you are able to resolve whatever you're missing, right? Whatever you needed to retrieve or collect or, Clarissa Piccola Estes talks about collecting all of the bones and then singing to them. It's you can restore that creativity. You can restore those energies. But first, to get there, you have to strip away all of these things that you have needed to lose. There's a really famous Sumerian mythology about Inanna going into the underworld to basically face Eresh Kigal and ask for her trusted advisor back. And she enters into the underworld, and her sister, Ereshkigal, basically tells her that she has to be treated like any other dead person coming into the underworld. And she's stripped of her clothing. She's stripped of her adornments, and then is basically psychically killed in the underworld.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
it's really important for us as people, and also watching these characters on the screen, to see them go through something so resonant that really does mimic what happens to us as humans when we go through a sort of catabasis, the lowest point in our lives. And when it's all resolved, she ends up becoming more powerful, and also recognizing the things that weren't working for her when she came out of the underworld. So Inanna ends up basically killing her lover because he was unfaithful to her. He was not the right person for her at that point in time. He ends up having to die too. Sumerian myth is just so cool.
They do.
Ereshkigal is like the best and so scary, and like the true goddess in the deep that you do not actually want to face, but maybe you need to. So all of that really, really important. We'll try to make sure it's very clear, the different stages as we go through the text, or like through what we've seen, because I feel like this resonates so much.
Yeah. It's unmistakable.
All right, on to our Maiden to Mage segments. All right. Where shall we start, Missy, with Allura?
Yes. I want to start with Allura and then move on to Bavmorda. So we're only going to give some basics here because we do want to call things out as we go through the episode. But as we have mentioned in the past, we have the Powerpuff Girls and Graydon as well, who are all at this point maidens. Coming into this episode, they're all still maidens. What we have seen over the course of this episode is Allura has actually progressed to hero. She has left the maiden phase and become a hero or a heroine. So we'll talk about how that happened. But just a reminder for everyone, or if you're new to this conversation, the maiden phase is a period of dependence. The maiden is associated with their mentors or parents. And so moving out of this phase, regardless of whether they are currently in a shadow archetype or not, if they're in a healthy archetype, maybe, they need to differentiate themselves, separate themselves from the parent or mentor. Now, it does need to be total, so it can't be partial. So you'll remember last time we talked about, Jade killed Valentine. That was a sort of psychic separation from her parent. Yes, that's a step on her journey. She's still not all the way there yet. Allura, however, has really totally encountered all of the forces on which she was dependent, has deliberately and knowingly separated herself from them, and has now come into her power in a new phase of her life. So the three archetypes that she faces, or I don't know if they would be the threshold guardians, as you like to say, but the three figures that she faces that she would need to separate herself from in order to move on to hero are the too good mother, which is just, your very sweet mother who's always happy to protect you for maybe much longer than you need protecting, or maybe longer than protecting would be healthy for you. We have the naive father that just doesn't understand that baby girl is growing up. And then you have the predator, which is obviously the predator of the psyche, who is going to express your doubts and tell you that you can't do it and you're wrong. And they want to destroy you. They want to consume you. So that's what it would be. The too good mother, the naive father, and the predator. And Allura in this episode faces all three and actively chooses to separate herself from them. She does it in different ways for each one, which is incredibly cool. And eventually progresses to hero. And so by the time we begin the next episode, she's going to be in the hero stage of her journey.
Yeah. And I wanted to say that effectively being in a hero stage of your journey means that you're almost on the start again. But sometimes the phase is, you start over basically. So there's going to be another threshold.
Yes.
For her to enter into being a queen, right?
Yes.
There is going to be another threshold. There is going to be another journey home. And like what I wanted to say is that, and I didn't call it out so much in the Descent to the Goddess, but she actually also goes to the next phase to become the hero, which is she reconnects with the feminine and returns home. Basically to her new cohort of adventurers. And yeah, it's so cool to see this happen, I guess, quickly. I mean, we're halfway through the season.
It doesn't feel rushed in any way. It feels very organic, which is great. But yeah, I really didn't expect her to arrive at this point until the end of the season. So I'm actually delighted. I'm delighted that she's, come into her power in that way and that we're going to see her go on a different journey now, because the hero phase of life and of the cycle is about, all right, now you've differentiated yourself. So you have a better understanding of who you are alone, independently. But now it becomes, you have to now associate with other people. So that journey to queen is about starting to come into community. Now you don't have yet the sort of, you're not at the height of your power the way you are when you're a king, but you are now, you have other people that you care for, other people that you might protect. And so that's where she's headed next.
In many ways, like it's like the heart of the community that you're trying to head towards, like becoming like the compassionate, caring, or the shadow versions, which are like anti-compassion, right? Like they're very malicious in nature. And then when you get to king, you end up caring for the whole world. You are the world. That's like a sort of the kingdom is healthy if the king is healthy kind of concept.
Which is such a good segue into Bavmorda, if you're ready.
Yeah, let's talk about her. Yeah.
Perfect. Look at you. All right. So Bavmorda, I want to go back to who she was in the film, because we talked about this a little bit, obviously, during our breakdown of the film. But
evil queen sorceress Bavmorda.
Yes, but my feelings on it have changed a little because of this episode. This episode has shifted my perspective on that a little bit. So yes, I still think you can classify her as a sorceress queen. However, she also fits very, very well into an aggressive shadow archetype of the king.
Yes.
Which is
she was a kind
tyrant.
Of both.
She's a tyrant. And so what a tyrant is, again, there's always the passive and the aggressive. So the passive shadow for a king is a puppet, and the aggressive shadow is a tyrant. And for a king, because he or she in this instance are at the height of their power, then the only place for them to go is into death. They've literally reached the pinnacle, and that's why then they go into death. And so what typically happens is the king has to learn that strength cannot resolve all problems, and that they must have some sort of sacrifice. Frequently, this is of quite literal sacrifice. The king will actually die and pass on the kingdom to someone else. But it can be, figurative sacrifice as well. But the point is that the king must learn that strength is not everything. They must learn to sacrifice to pass on the crown to someone else. And then they enter that stage of psychic death. And now, who am I without all this power that I had before? I don't know. So
are you saying that her foolish knocking over the bowl onto herself was actually sort of a Freudian slip, that she really wanted to die for the sake of the world?
I don't know if it's that she wanted to die, but she literally had to. Like she had to.
This was the only way, because she had nowhere to go but
exactly.
Failure. Yeah.
Exactly. So the tyrant, because the tyrant cannot succeed indefinitely. And there's a lot of aspects of this. The tyrant is not creative. This is why many tyrants are threatened by creative power, i.e. the promised baby who's going to defeat them.
Nothing but promise.
Exactly. That's very, and they don't generate or grow anything. So they're threatened by it. And
that's why Nockmaar and the kingdom can't grow anything, because it's like dead.
Yes. So Bavmorda, she's a tyrant, and by the time she sort of is sucked into the netherworld and therefore dead as far as we know. She would be moving into the crone phase. Now, we don't know if we will see her again. We think it's unlikely, but the point is that regardless, wherever she is in the story, even if she doesn't appear on screen, she's in the crone stage. And the question is, does being in a state of death cause her to reconsider her actions and experience a sort of redemption arc, in which case she's a healthy version of the crone? Or does she continue in her evil ways, continuing to be very aggressive, maybe trying to pull strings from behind the scenes, trying to regain this power? That would make her a wicked witch.
Yeah.
And so the reason I raised this, even though, we think we won't see her again, is because one of the things that we learned in this episode is that she was once a maiden too. And so she has been through these phases as well. Willow deliberately and specifically compares Allura and Bavmorda, talking about how Bavmorda was once young and he uses the term bright, which of course we know is used to describe Allura's light. Yeah. And so she was once not the evil queen Bavmorda. She became that. And so that's why I want to call out these stages, is because you can really see how they've been doing it already even with the legacy characters.
Absolutely. I also want to say, often when you're somebody in a crone stage, the only thing that pulls you out is a young hero or maiden or person who reminds you of your humanity. And that's sort of what we're getting with Willow, because again, Willow is in a crone stage, and it's very, very, very apparent. Poor Willow. But he needs Allura the hero to pull him out of that. So it'll be good, because a hero coming and knocking on a mentor's door, they are connected by the mentor needing to grow as well. That's good.
Yes. It's exciting.
Well, let's jump into the episode.
Yay!
All right. We start out with a new book and a new setting. It's obviously not Sorsha's book.
Yeah.
It's the Melitrium, the book that we see later on in the episode, which, of course, has this circular round rune situation with most people that we've been speaking with today have identified these as Icelandic magical staves, which, do you want me to dig into it?
Yeah, I mean, sure. Yeah. I actually haven't heard anything about this, so I'm learning it for the first time.
Yeah, so these were in grimoires that were written on vellum, calf skin. This one is written on
satyr skin,
which is great. And grimoires are books of spells, right? And spells are basically ways of putting good faith out in the universe. It's like, manifesting in a way, using the ways of the supernatural or belief in something, right? And, oh God, I apologize to anyone who speaks the language in a head. So, Agish Jalamar, which is one of the main ones that has been found from the Aegis, and this actually translates to the Helm of Awe or the Helm of Terror. It's actually related to Siegfried from a story perspective. So thus the ring cycle. It's actually not just the singular one that was created, but actually has been identified by Dr. Stephen Flowers as a family of these symbols that are built around and have a common sort of symmetrical pattern to them. Usually there's 4, 6, or 8 arms. The Vegvisir, which is the one that people have been most commonly looking at and saying it's very, very similar to that one, is actually one that translates directly to Wayfinder or finding your way.
What?
But I actually cannot, I've looked, it showed up in the 1800s. It doesn't seem to be associated with Norse culture at all. So it could just be something that's in the miasmas somebody created because it looked very similar. I don't 100% know. But okay, let me talk about them for a quick second, which is that they are representations of universal power, the power of the universe being concentrated into a single spot. At the center of it is the self, or the subject of the magical workings, and the arms grow outwards with all of the things that you want it to do. So everything is radiating out, directing the energies either inwards or outwards from the self. The arms are the intention of the working.
Interesting. Okay.
So we don't 100% know what this one on the book, or later the one that's on Graydon's chest, means. But Graydon's chest has a circle around the center of the center.
And then there's the other symbol as well.
The other symbol on the book does not.
Well,
it has the circle around it.
But the drawn version of the circular symbol, not the one, not the 8-pronged one, not that one, the sort of octagonal one, but the one that people have compared to a yin yang or something else, which we'll get into in a minute. But that one, if you look at the drawn version of it, not the one on the door, it looks like hands pushing outward, because there's
that's not what I'm talking about. That's the next page that they flip open.
No.
Yeah.
But that's what I'm saying. I guess I want to understand is how they're related. Like, they're two different symbols that appear. How are they related? Because to your point about the hands extending outward or casting out or throwing out.
Yeah, like the arms of the almost like runic ends.
Yes.
Yeah. I don't know. And the other symbol that appears just as they open the book is this, like, I described it as a corrupted yin yang, because yin yangs are supposed to be equal, opposite, and balanced. And this is almost like a locked and in and controlled yin yang. Like, the spirit of the universe is stuck.
Yeah, it definitely, I mean, it bears a resemblance to the yin yang for sure. So you know that the balance concept is in there, but there's also something wrong with it. And then, of course, the other issue with it, which people have called out, which I noticed in the trailers, and I was like, this makes me uncomfortable. It looks a little bit like a swastika. Yeah. And that's not super comfortable. So I'm assuming, therefore, that is not accidental, and that this is supposed to
be evil.
Make us subconsciously understand that this is evil and associated with evil.
And it's everywhere in this episode.
It is. Yes.
Everywhere. And it's associated with the crone. It's associated with Bavmorda. It's associated with this book. It's associated with the castle. It's everywhere.
Yeah.
So 2 different symbols we've seen so far. So much symbolism. Let's go.
A lot. I know. Well, and then there's the less subtle stuff, like the blood in the book.
Yeah, the blood.
Exactly. And so I think that the whole point is that the fact that we open on a different book, it's very obviously, even if you don't know all this detail, it's very obviously evil from the get-go. It's blood-soaked. I mean, you instantly understand, whoa, something is very different from the other episodes immediately.
And that's the power that they end up using in the episode too, which is fascinating in and of itself. Okay. So they're walking towards the vortex and Nockmaar.
And it's raining, which is how you know things are not well in the heavens, in the sky. Something is terribly wrong.
And Willow points out, this is what she wants. You know, and like, to me, this is like very like House of Horrors or like the Mansion on the Hill horror vibes. Like, it's raining and people need to take shelter in that scary haunted house on the top of the hill. It just felt like, oh yes, we are going into a haunted house.
Yes. I also like that this really opens with Kit as more or less the POV character, which is interesting because that's also kind of how they started the whole series. It started really by following her perspective before we moved on to Allura or anyone else. It was very focused on her. And so I thought that was really interesting that now that we're at this really critical turning point in the whole story, that we're kind of back to Kit's perspective. Because first of all, you see that she's been affected by the events of the previous episode. We talked about how the previous episode was really, crushing her poor ego because, she was so arrogant and full of herself before this. And now she's realized that all of those things that she thought made her so great were not actually true. And so she's kind of coming off of that now and sort of starting to figure out who she is. And so what I thought was interesting was when Willow stumbles and she's immediately like, let me help you. Mm-hmm. That's not something that character would have done a few episodes ago.
She's been humbled.
She has been. She's been humbled, and but now she's sort of not chafing against it as much anymore. And she's kind of figuring out who she is again. And that's why, this whole episode, she's so much softer, and, you can see her really feeling the impact of all the events and, realizing the influence that she can have. So
and having
I really like that.
Care and compassion for others, as you pointed out. But we immediately get a call out of one of her shadow aspects.
Yep.
The shadows that she has right away when Boorman says, or as Kit calls her, Grandma.
Yes. I love it. It's so funny. And then you hear Sorsha's voice telling her like, oh, it's in your blood. It's in Eric's blood. We all have it. And then they enter into the castle. And I thought immediately that this shot looked like an MC Escher painting where, the one with all the staircases that go different directions. And then when you look closely, they don't quite connect right and everything. It looks like that.
It's a labyrinth.
Right. It's a labyrinth, and it immediately communicates like, oh, I understand where we are. I understand what this is.
Where are we?
Yeah, we're diving into the subconscious. Here we go. Who's ready?
So mazes, labyrinths, prisons that are endless, mental institutions that you can never find the right hallway into, all in the subconscious. And that's actually really fascinating because horror, a lot of the time, entirely functions in the quote unquote subconscious underworld, right?
Yeah. Yeah, because you're interrogating your own fears, and that's really what this episode is, which is why it leans so hard into horror.
Exactly. And I found it fascinating that they purposefully set up like their place in the seat of Bavmorda's power, the throne room, in the in so many ways like the heart of this home. And and they just start bad mouthing her.
Yes. Yeah, they just start talking. Yeah, exactly. It's so great. Also, I just want to say, and I think I'm sorry if I get this wrong because I'm doing it off the top of my head, but it was Marianne Maid, I think, noticed like, oh, it's that same throne design that Lucasfilm is obsessed with. I started laughing because I was like, oh my gosh, it is. I didn't even notice that.
But it's actually like a dragon, I think. Because it's got like the like spikiness out, but then there's a head that comes up in the middle.
Consumption aspect.
Consumption. Yeah. I was struck by like how they're like chaining Graydon up and like how, I don't know, it was fascinating. I don't know.
Well, so in that moment, he's what they all fear. So if we're talking about they're interrogating their fears, we get into their individual fears a little bit later. But to start off with, the most immediate fear they all have is they're scared of him. So they're chaining him up. So what it is this immediate like chaining up of the shadow. What do we do about it? I don't know.
Yeah, exactly. And so they chain him up right in the middle of the throne room, and they're like, why does she have chains here? It's like, well, Bavmorda knew how to romp. All sorts of weird stuff.
Oh my gosh. And he's got that on the brain the whole rest of the episode too. Boorman, like, I keep going, can you stop obsessing with Bavmorda's orgies, Boorman? Good grief.
Yeah. That's what I totally thought that he was referring
exactly
to.
What he's because I forget what he says later, but it's the same kind of concept where he's still kind of stuck on it. And I just want to be like, dude.
But yeah, they talk about like, this is the place, with the 13th ritual, and like immediately calling out Elora's like unresolved history, right? She knew this was her home theoretically because of the legends or whatever, but it's a very different situation to be kind of faced with it. And at the same moment, we get Willow's shadow in the, you and Rizal, the two most powerful sorcerers, were able to stop her.
And that was so interesting. I thought they were retconning for a second. And I was so glad when it turned out not to be a retcon, but I was worried.
But, and I was like, I wrote down in the lie. And then he says, the Fibonacci hex, a fib.
Yes, that's so good.
It's so good. God.
I mean, there's other stuff going on there too, but yeah.
But like, this is the shadows. Like, all of these shadows are like popping up. Like, just like once they're in there, just like almost like coming out of the walls, like in a horror sense.
Coming out of the walls, man.
And then Borman poking at everybody's shadows is like, you know, oh, meanwhile, your fiance, I mean, Greyonce, is ravaged by a 300-year-old demon. A, how did he know? B, that is the best name for Graydon and fiance. Poking a kid, like, haha, your fiance.
Yep. Yeah. No, he's got their number for sure. But the other thing I want to mention about the Fibonacci thing that I thought was so interesting was like, I mean, granted, there's any number of reasons they could have chosen that. And I think that the Fib thing is absolutely brilliant. I love it so much. But I was thinking about a few things with Fibonacci, and this is probably kind of galaxy brain, but
I love it. There's no wrong answers.
No, the number 13 is a major part of the Fibonacci sequence. 13th, what was it? The 13th night. Ritual of the 13th night. So it's definitely part of that. The Fibonacci sequence is also part of the golden ratio. So that is, you know, gold is associated with Tirasli. And we've mentioned this a number of times that you see gold reappearing a lot. And you can go back and look, actually, gold reappears over and over and over and over again associated with Tirasli. So it's a big thing.
Yeah.
Right. Exactly. And, you know, even Sorcerer's always dressed in gold and stuff like that. So so it's definitely a big thing. You know, the spiral, like a rotating storm. You know, there's also some people will actually compare it to the sort of yin yang symbol that we saw. It's not the same mathematically, but it's very similar conceptually in terms of being about balance and you know, perfect balance, perfect tension. And so
it's also
so I thought that
like
was
found everywhere in nature, too.
Right?
It's also very natural.
Yeah. So it was really an interesting choice for many reasons.
It's so cool.
Oh, and then another thing. So in this scene, Graydon's laying in Alora's lap.
Oh, that happens like right next. Like he's tired and he's like laying in her lap. And I was like, wait a second.
Yes. But not only is it super romantic and I love it, but also what we were just talking about, they were chaining him up. They're scared of him. They're all afraid of She's got him in her lap. She's not scared. So this is how you know. She's
comforting him. And, and then the very next scene when Kit turns on this like, oh, I have to kill him. Okay, so we have to talk about this before I get into Alora protecting him. But okay, let's talk about Kit and her desire to kill Graydon. Okay, so when you go through a phase of like feeling like you're not powerful, sometimes you over exaggerate to say you are powerful and grown up. This is like a child saying, I'm a big boy or I'm a big girl.
Yeah. I can do it. What do you mean you think I can't do
I'm a hero. I can be like Jade and Borman who kill people.
Yeah.
Like, literally, it sounds so whiny to me.
It does.
I hear it. She's like, oh, I guess I have to kill Graydon. And everyone's like, no, you don't. You don't. Yeah. And this is like, we'll get into another theme, but it's smaller throughout it because it's only specific towards Kit and Jade and Borman and their kind of like weird triangle that they have all episode. Which is that once you kill somebody that you love or that wasn't trying to kill you, you actually end up killing a part of yourself.
Yes.
And they're trying to prevent that from her. And it gives me the feeling, because both Borman and Jade are companion-esque in this aspect, that Borman killed Mad Mardigan or feels responsible for his death.
I think he believes he did.
Yeah. There's a belief aspect, and that's his shadow that he is trying to avoid, and he's very successful at avoiding it this episode.
He never has to confront it. Yeah.
He gets like touched on with like the Lux Arcana and like what that means, but like that is him, his shadows that he's like avoiding. He's very good at avoiding this episode. But Alora ends up protecting Graydon by like kind of calling her bluff. Like, if you're going to do that, Your Majesty, you might as well do it yourself. But yeah, no, Graydon's like, I'm not strong enough to withstand this stuff, you have to do it.
And this is important because this is the first of several times where Graydon specifically calls out his lack of strength. And of course, this comes into play later when he sort of reveals his jealousy of Eric and everything. And so, and this is important too. I know. And this is important too, because again, so many of these stages are about understanding that strength is not the answer, that strength is not the way.
Sometimes
or that it's
violence
not the only
isn't the
way.
answer.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So it's really important that, Graydon feels like he has to do this. And it's so interesting because I don't want to get too far ahead of ourselves, but it's something his brother calls out later as well, is he says, wisdom, not strength, makes a good king. And this is what he needs to learn. And he's not there yet, but I think he will get there.
Absolutely. We get Willow talking about Bavmorda, which we really talked about a lot during Maiden and Mage. Was there anything else you wanted to add other than she was corrupted? Anakin-esque, like Star Wars Anakin-esque, like the crone found her. She had a bright youth. She was like Allura, so special in a way. Yep. And then, she was convinced to join this Order of the Worm. And seek these unnatural powers, the taboo magic. Feels very Star Wars, Sith, dark side-esque.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I'm assuming that the purpose of giving us this history is some kind of foreshadowing, saying, especially once they start talking more specifically later about the possibility that the crone will attempt to corrupt Eric, which of course we've been saying from the beginning. But from the trailers even.
To me, drawing the parallels between Bavmorda and Allura reminds us something that I always talk about in Star Wars, which is even the worst person in the galaxy is interconnected to you. I'm a big Sheev Palpatine redemptionist. And so fundamentally, I'm a Bavmorda redemptionist. And that Allura being the goddess of the world means that she's responsible for everything in the world, even the evil bits. Then Willow's like, there is something that could save you. And if anybody had it, it was definitely in Bavmorda's book collection, the Malatrium.
Which, it's a pretty straightforward Latin name, but it just means evil 3.
Interestingly, they talk about the spell they're going to cast, or the alchemical purgation of Namshub, which is also a Sumerian god.
Oh my gosh. What?
He goes by a different name, but Namshub is one of his other names. To me, it just sounds Cthulhu-esque. But Namshub was a Sumerian god meaning light, and it's the purgation of Namshub to throw out. Maybe it's like purging the light, the dark light, or something. Like, I don't know.
Oh my gosh.
There's some stuff, but it's introduction to alchemy, he says to Allura. She's like, I can't do this. She's like, it's alchemy, i.e. it's cooking.
Yes. Oh, that made me so happy. Well, this is what's so great about it, right? Is that we're getting back into her power and something that's ideal for her. So yeah, that was super exciting. Then of course they leaned real hard into it in the next scene.
He calls out the goo, and he calls out staying out of the high tower. I have comments on the goo.
Go ahead. I have comments on the goo as well, so go ahead.
Okay, first, this is a direct John Carpenter, Prince of Darkness influence the entire episode. The goo being the way that the evil infects is exactly how the goo infects in Prince of Darkness. And also there's this big theme of Jesus and Satan coming into the world as aliens. They're not actually... It's Cthulhu-esque. John Carpenter making a Cthulhu-esque thing that basically says, like, both Jesus and Satan weren't actually, from Earth. They were aliens. And possession is spread person to person. And how Graydon looks at the end looks exactly like how the main character, when he's fully, like, possessed near the end, looks. So lots of Prince of Darkness influence.
Mm-hmm. And what I thought was so interesting about the whole goo conversation was the part that was actually passed off as a joke ended up being very interesting foreshadowing, which was, he's like, don't sniff it, don't touch it, don't eat it.
Yep.
And Alora says, why would we eat it? But then how does she win at the end? How does she heal him? She eats it.
She eats it. Throw away the recipe and just eat the food.
I love it. It made me so happy.
So good. Yes. And then stay out of the high tower, which is, of course, this is our father figure. Presenting as a threshold guardian, because she needs to face the highest tower in her journey, because so much dark things happen to her, and she needs to see it for herself, to confront it fully.
But it's also that she can't go to the high tower until she goes to the deep dark dungeon. She has to do that first.
Oh, absolutely. I totally agree. It's just also, he created barriers before she even got there.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. They start their preparation of things, and Jade and Kit are wandering the labyrinth, and Kit's trying to comfort Jade. Like, I know, this, I know what he meant to you, Valentine. And Jade's like, Kit, you're such a child.
But it shows a lot of growth for Kit, because again, she's trying to be compassionate, and she's trying to give. The thing about Kit is, at the beginning of her story, she just takes. She just takes and takes, and she just thinks, this is for me, that's for me. She doesn't really know or care about what's going on in Jade's life at all. And so now all of a sudden she's, I'm concerned for you. I know that this is upsetting for you. I'm here for you.
Oh yeah, it's
what can I do?
Yeah.
So she's really trying, and to some extent it works, because Jade opens up to her when what appears to be probably the first time, and tells her a little bit about her childhood, which is really important. So I really, really liked seeing the progression of their relationship, and I really liked seeing a Kit mature. Stuff. It was great. It was really nice,
this episode. And Jade talking about how being on this path to knighthood, or to being a hero, right, has given her purpose and a way to channel her anger into something, because anger is power. And if it's used as righteousness, right, rather than like maliciousness, if it's used to like fuel justice, I feel like it's actually one of the more powerful tools we have as humans. And it's often quite shamed.
Well, especially for women.
Angry. Yeah.
And and we've talked about that before, about how, women's anger is often presented as this dark and dangerous force. And so the idea that it could be channeled into something positive for Jade is really, really important.
Defensive and like, something valuable and worthwhile. And so Valentine had given her a sword, right? He gave me a sword, and I killed him with it. So he gave me a sword to protect me, and I used it against him. So the reverse of like, it was given with love, and I did violence to that thing. So that means that I didn't love him.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's a struggle for her, for Jade, the whole episode.
Poor Jade.
Borman is wandering, looking for wine, treasure.
Oh my gosh.
And he finds the weird, corrupted yin-yang doorway, and we hear like a party on the other side.
Well, I'm assuming this is his expectation of Bavmorda's orgies again.
And like he's drinking wine, and you hear Borman, and it's like this woman's voice is Temptress voice.
Yep.
I didn't have many thoughts about this, because Borman struggles with even staying at that door.
Yeah. We've talked about this before. He's the coward archetype right now.
Yeah.
Which is the passive hero. He just will run from everything. And what's so wild about
we see that this whole episode.
And he even has a level of self-awareness about it, because he actually says that to Jade, and yet he still does it. So he really hasn't run into whatever it is he needs to make him realize he can't run anymore.
They collect all their different aspects for the alchemy and the poultice and the different things they're going to be doing. And they also require essence of nightshade. And they're like, we have no essence of nightshade. And of course, Alora's like, shaded possum bladder.
Yes. She says we need brined possum bladder. And then I think she says something about like red-throated possums eat only nightshade. Eat only nightshade.
There's so much in this. And I tweeted out how, remember when there was that period of time in 2019 when all the Reylos on the internet all started to reenact all of the Reylo scenes with nothing but possums. And I said, this can't be. No, it can't possibly be. Okay.
I mean, who knows, right? There's definitely a lot you can do with this. I mean, so
no, that was just my brain going a little too far.
I love it though. I'm happy to
let's dig into the nightshade mythology and symbolism.
Tinfoil tiaras, the whole 9 yards. Well, you probably know more about nightshade than I do, but I was really kind of more interested in the possum and specifically the part of the body they use, which is the spleen. This is huge. So essence of nightshade, obviously associated with night, it's a poison. So again, it kind of refers to the poison that is spreading throughout Graydon's body at this point. And excuse me. So what they need to get the possum, which is a nocturnal animal. So again, a night reference. Once more, just like Ritual of the 13th Night, lots and lots of night references. Very, very obvious.
Wait, we're in the dark.
Yeah. I know. It's all everything shadow. They're just beating us over the head with it. But here's what I find so fascinating. They need the spleen, specifically, is what she says she needs. Now, the spleen is associated with black bile in sort of medieval medicine, the humors, right? We talked about this during our conversation about the film. And black bile is associated with melancholia. If you have an excess of black bile, you have melancholia. So this spreading just depression and darkness that Graydon is experiencing, this idea it comes from the spleen. And so we must pull the nightshade, the poison, from the spleen and
this melancholy state.
Yes, and heal with it. So I thought that was incredibly cool that there's all these night references, and then there's also, and everything, again, this emphasis on black. It's dark. It's a dark mood. Everything about it is, expressing Graydon. Graydon's always dressed all in black all the time. So what this is, having to sort of treat Graydon with, you're having to boil it down to the essence, so to speak, of what is plaguing him. And it's this poison from this horrible memory.
Right. That's great. I love it. And just generally speaking, deadly nightshade, or Atropa belladonna, so it's related to the fates, and of course a symbol of deadly beautifulness, right? So it's deadly and beautiful. It holds some pretty rich symbolism. The fruit is considered to be the devil's property. So you're not supposed to eat the fruit because you will be punished by the devil himself. In art and poetry, it typically represents danger and betrayal. The flowers stand for silence and falsehood. And in history, it has been used as both healing, beauty applications, and straight up to kill people. It is all those things. Sort of a thing of everything. And the idea is that when you use it, when you end up taking it, it ends up becoming what you want of it. Interesting.
Yeah. And it's also worth mentioning that these same things that we're referring to, these poisons, again, like the whole excess of black bile, all of these things also were often attributed to demonic possession.
Yep.
Which is another thing that is occurring in the episode.
Do we want to talk about possession?
Yeah.
So briefly. Okay. I do have some thoughts on it from Marie-Louise von Franz, who is my favorite Jungian interpreter of fairy tale. She actually talks about how when people we assume are possessed in either story or in real life, they end up becoming the archetype. So that's really key because you end up being possessed by the shadow and becoming the shadow. And it's your own shadow. So you are the archetype. But it's powerful and destructive because there's no way to integrate it. And you end up basically burning yourself up.
Yeah. Which is why, this idea that at some point Graydon will cease to exist. He will, as Willow says, he will lose control.
He's just wearing his whole garbage bag on his head. No. Sorry. I love that Graydon is he talks about his scars because they're like, was this part of it? We didn't see you get that. When they take out, open up his shirt, etc. And he's like, no, I was a sick kid. I don't know what it was. I'm not supposed to talk about it. It's shameful. This is also super key to shadows, is that if you feel shame about them, you ignore them, you never deal with them. But Allura, combats that by saying, no, you're resilient for having dealt with that.
And her use of that word is so important because that's the same word that the vision of her mother uses to describe her later. And especially when, Graydon keeps doubting himself and she keeps trying to tell him, no, you're more than that. And, you don't need to be strong and confident and you are resilient and everything. And so what we're learning here and what Allura is learning is what it is that she really values. Because she doesn't really know or hasn't known up to this point. But she's starting to learn. And
from a situation where you're trying to figure out who you are from an identity perspective, having somebody else call those things out to you and then looking at them and saying, yes, I identify with that. That feels true, is sometimes the only way we can do it when we're children. Yeah. Absolutely. We move on to Kit and Borman.
Thing that was so funny here that I really, really loved was when, they're talking about what they're looking for here. I'm looking for the possum. And Borman says, yeah, I'm looking for eel jelly or nymph butter, which was hilarious to me because those sound extremely sexual. And so it feels like he still really got Bavmorda's orgies on the brain while he's running around trying to figure out how to get this door open with the feminine voices calling to him. So it's just a little thing, but I thought it was so funny.
Kit's ruminating on, if this ritual doesn't work, I'll have to kill him.
She keeps saying that.
Borman's like, wow, Bavmorda would be very proud of her granddaughter right now.
Ooh. Oh, it's so good because she's clearly immediately thinking of Sorsha's warning. And so she's very uncomfortable being compared to Bavmorda. But what's interesting is, again, you do see her growth once more. How does she react? She still reacts with compassion. So it's great because you're still seeing her sort of, she's still trying to help. She's still doing what needs to be done. What is her role? She's not the warrior. That's Jade and Borman's role. It's not hers. What can she do? Well, she's out there, digging around trying to find stuff literally in a cupboard.
and she finds a whole possum in a pickle jar.
She does it. She does it. I love it.
It's good. So she's on her way back and Allura's helping, stir things. And Willow's like, no, you need to say the words. You need to help me. And Graydon helps Allura say
with the pronunciation.
Amok. It's a hard K.
So and then she's sort of questioning whether she did it right. And he goes, perfect. Oh, they're adorable. Love it.
She does do it well because he starts to see his father. Oh my God. This is like a gut punch in a very... Yeah, what did I tell you? Give Galador an heir with a claim to the throne of Tirasleen. Redeem yourself from what you stole from me. And then his brother shows up.
Yes.
And says, it's okay. You can do this.
I'll catch you if you fall.
I'll catch you if you fall.
Of course, we don't get the entire context of that until the end.
I don't even know what to think about his dad. Like, I don't know if we know yet. Like, I just don't. I don't even really want to speculate. I just want them to tell me because they're doing such a good job.
I don't really know what's going on with his dad. What I can say is it definitely feels like he's blaming Graydon for the influence of dark magic on him. And to me, this felt very, very similar to Kylo.
Yes.
Because this idea that we're not respecting the fact that being influenced by a dark power, something that is, preying upon you, a predator, which is what we talked about earlier, right? There's no respect for that. And so instead he's being cast out and sent to do the bidding of the mentors without any concern for how it actually affects him. And so this is all very, very Ben Solo in a lot of ways. And so, I definitely reacted to that very strongly. Also want to mention, just because tinfoil tiaras, but give Galador an heir with a claim to Tirasleen. Who else do we know with a claim to Tirasleen?
Yeah. I mean, that's the hilarious thing about what they've given us with Graydon and Eric and Alora and Kit, right? So Alora existing means none of this needs to happen. Like the Kit Graydon marriage, he could totally just marry Alora. And she's the Empress. She's the Empress of Galadorn, too.
Yep.
I love it. What it is. It's very Willow to, like, say these, like, half-truths that end up being fulfilled in a different way later.
Well, one of the best examples from the film was take her to Tirasleen where a good king and queen will raise her. At the time that this was stated, Tirasleen was empty. It was a ruin. And the people who eventually became that good king and queen were
Mad Mardigan and Sorsha.
Yeah. They hadn't even met yet at that point in the story. So, and Sorsha was still on the bad side and all this other stuff. So none of these pieces were in place at the time that statement was made. And yet that was what happened. And that was what it referred to. So that's why I really love all these constant references to Graydon's queen, Graydon's bride, getting, having a claim to the throne of Tirasleen. Yes, he can have all of that with the Laura.
Yes, he can. All right. Kit wanders down a hallway with her pickled possum. Her pickled possum package. And runs into a tapestry. I took a guess that this is the Immemorial City.
Yes, I guessed the same thing. And speaking of which, do we think that the Immemorial City is also the Chimerian City from the vision or the history?
No, I was asking myself that question too. There's a lot more domes in the Chimerian City than we see in the tapestry. Or in the ruins.
Fair point.
Maybe. I think that would be like cool, but I mean, it would also mean that Borman would be familiar with the Immemorial City because he's been there. He found the Chimerian Cuirass.
But he sounds like he hasn't ever been there because he sounds like, oh, no one's ever crossed the Shattered Sea. Yeah. So I guess probably not. But I was just curious. I wasn't sure.
I don't know yet.
Yeah.
Tapestries are really cool because they're weaving and thus fate.
Yes.
So this is like saying there's something really important that has been set out like this. The crone in a beautiful dress is speaking with Bavmorda to renounce her family, her like all of the things that are associated with her, and join and become the primal priestess of the worm. the harbinger of the Eternal One, because she was from the blood of the six Fae.
Mm-hmm. It's a little confusing to me, the relationship of all of these to one another. It leaves me unsure of what the crone really is.
I don't know. I do get the impression that the crone will be beautiful at some point in the future.
Okay. Where does that impression come from, out of curiosity?
Because she's beautiful in the tapestry.
But do we know that's her? Because I wasn't sure if that was just another priestess.
It's the voice of the crone in the subtitles.
No, I know it is, but do we know that that's that the person in is the speaker?
That's what they're representing. And literally,
okay.
like, that's where they're going, because it's got the, like, weird line and the pool thing and, like...
Yeah, you're right. Okay.
I just don't know that they'd be tricksy enough. And all over... like to just not be like, this is the crone. Also, all over this tapestry, weird corrupted yin yangs.
Yeah.
Everywhere. Around the border. Also, this land looks lush and looks like there's lots of cool trees and plant life and flying dragons. And she was riding a flying lion in one part of the tapestry.
I couldn't tell if it was supposed to be like a griffin or even a dragon, because a lot of times dragons.
It could be either. Yeah. It was definitely a lion head with wings.
Yeah, so. I saw that. Mm-hmm.
It's hard to tell. It was dark. And then, much like Kit, like us wanting to get a closer look, Kit gets too close and lights it aflame with the fire. Consumption.
Yeah, right. But it also was aligned with all of the voiceovers. So some of the things that were said here by the crone. Do you renounce your name, your family? So this is important because, again, what's Kit's family name? Tanthalos. What have we said that's associated to? Tantalus of the house of Atreus, consuming children, consuming family, sacrificing family members instead of caring for them. What does Bavmorda do when she becomes corrupted by the crone? Do you renounce your name, your family? She renounced them. She abandoned them. She sacrificed them to her lust for power. And so, again, the way that this is constantly presented in the story is as a warning to Kit. This is who you could become. This is what you could become. And then the next thing that is said is, we might deliver this world from suffering into his warm embrace. Warm embrace, fire, consumption, again. So this Eternal One character is consuming as well. And so then, of course, we see that played out literally with the tapestry setting on fire. And we end with the blood of the six runs in your veins. You shall be his harbinger, primal priestess of the worm. So such a great scene. Freaky scene. It's,
if it is a warning, then it is very much like the Dagobah to Luke Skywalker in Star Wars.
Very much.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. We have Jade up on the rain-soaked battlements, looking out for the gales, doing a good job, but she's sad, and so it's raining because she can't be seen to be crying the whole episode.
Yep.
Borman walks by. You won't defeat me, Vault. And he, decides to open up that he's really hoping that he can defeat this Vault because he hopes there's something cool, like an eagle fighting a horse. And Jade's just like, Kit's right. One of us is going to have to kill him. I thought I always wanted to be a knight to serve, but so far I hate it. That's so real. It's so real.
Yeah, she's not satisfied by what she thought she wanted.
False boot of success.
Boop, boop. I wish we had like a chime or something we could play.
Yeah, so this is a really key part of the heroine's journey, which is that when you try to sort of live by patriarchal rules, do the right thing, not follow your heart, you end up feeling like nothing works. And it was not really for you, even though you might be on the right path because you always wanted to be a knight, but you're not doing it in the way that is your way, is your journey. Yeah. That's really key.
Yeah. And I think that one of the things that we ultimately learn by the end of this episode, especially with what happens with Graydon, is while it was necessary for the story for Valentine to die, from a moral perspective, he didn't have to die. That wasn't necessarily the answer, her killing him. And so I think that that's really what a lot of her journey in this episode is about, is her coming to the realization that, again, false spoon of success, like you said, that killing him did not seem to resolve the problem, or it didn't seem to be the best way to resolve the problem. And maybe there's another way.
There's a part of what the solution is in this next moment with Boorman talking about how his own past and them commiserating. When my partner died, I spent a lot of time running from myself. And then I finally realized that the only thing that you can't run away from is yourself.
Mm-hmm. Except that he clearly hasn't really realized it, since he hasn't internalized that lesson yet.
He's been talking it, not walking the walk. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
And she's like, how do you do that? He's like, you set your eyes on what you want and you go after it and you don't look back, i.e. you don't look at the shadow behind you.
Yes. I was like, it's Orpheus. It's a Lost Bride story. I was so excited.
But mainly that he hasn't taken out his shadow and dug through his smelly garbage bag that he's been dragging behind him.
Yeah, but that's again, it's like a warning for Jade. Same thing, like
you need to deal with this. Yeah.
Yes.
And like Jade just having the companionship and the compassion from Boorman, which is like sort of out of nowhere. She just starts crying and cries on him. And I love this line so much. Everyone deserves one good cry per quest. I love Boorman. Like, honestly, this character is just such a joy, even though he's not dealing with his own BS.
I love Boorman. I do find sometimes the humor's a little hit or miss for me. Like, I go between like genuine laughter and like a major groan.
Yeah. But also I think that's part of him. Like,
yeah, for sure. Mm-hmm. For sure.
Elora is cooking the possum. Yay, cooking.
Mm-hmm. She's cooking. And I love the whole exchange between her and Kit, where she's just like, if you're gonna faint or something, back up. So
I didn't know you were that weak, basically. Jeez.
Oh, brutal. Yeah, no, she is. Well, I mean, as soon as she realized that Kit wants to kill Graydon, she's pretty cold to her, right up until, of course, their sort of resolution at the end of the episode. But up to that point, she is quite cold to Kit for those reasons. But yeah, so then we get to Graydon now being possessed by different. Well, the lich starts to come out in him, and he starts to pretend, I guess, to be these other characters to mess with Elora and Willow.
We know he's instantly not him when he says, "Give me some water, Peck."
Yeah, it's Mad Mardigan.
Yeah.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
And we have Eric's voice come out. Mm-hmm. And Kit answers, Eric. And he's like, Dove, is that you?
Yeah. Oh,
just to like, Poor Kit. And then Mim's voice comes out, you can't protect her. And goes into what you saw and what happened to the village.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yes. What happened to your village? And this is going to be
Willow's
an important
shadows. Like, Kit got hit and Willow got hit.
Yes. And speaking of which, I do wonder because we don't see what happens to Willow after Elora runs out of the room. So I wonder.
And he has a gash on his head later.
Really? Oh, I didn't see that. Okay, well, I wonder if we're going to get a flashback in another episode that shows what he experienced in this
Maybe
castle.
He explains his dark secret.
Maybe
what happened to the village and what he knows. He explains to Laura this is what was said to me or something. I don't know.
Maybe
it doesn't matter. I don't know.
Maybe she experiences it for herself since she can now sort of take memories.
Yeah.
You never know.
Ooh. Yeah. I love it.
That could be cool.
So good.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Boorman is back at the treasure door, the vault door. Again, this is just symbolism, right? You can't get into the vault. You can't unlock your deepest secrets this way, right? He thinks that this is what he's all about, this golden treasure. This is the only thing he's about. But he's not. This is the thing that is standing in his way because that isn't the right path for him.
Yeah.
But he hears the tempter's voice again. Borman, you can make this right. She took the lux.
Yes. So now he realizes it's missing, or so it seems. And so, he sort of flies into a rage and runs off to find them.
And Jade is Kit had already left because of the Eric voice not acknowledging her.
Yeah.
And Alora had left, and they end up sitting on both sides of the hallway. And although gruff to begin with, Kit is more welcoming, and so Alora starts to open up.
Right. And this is where she puts into words exactly what we discussed about last episode, which was what encountering the woodcutters in the forest taught her, which was, the role of death in her journey and in her sort of calling. And people are going to die, and it's how she's going to cope with that. How does she cope with the responsibility of it? And this feeling that it gives her that she's not worthy, that she can't do magic, so why would anyone die for her? And that's where Kit sort of has to tries to tell her, actually, I saw, that you grew the berry bush, but she doesn't get a chance to tell her because Laura is drawn away by a voice that seems to be her mother.
We have Jade running down the hallways because she's getting lost. And she these ghosts, these like ghostly images start to appear of wounded people. So like she's surrounded by the feeling of death, right? Death surrounding her. And she sees the ghost of her mother who is dying. And then we see General Kale at the end of the hallway.
Yes.
I found out on Twitter today, David W. Collins, really amazing composer as well as analyzer of music, also does sort of sound mixing and design with Lucasfilm and with Skywalker Sound. And he said that Sam Witwer actually practiced the voice for like weeks to play this character. So it sounds cool. Exactly like Kale. And, of course, they had somebody in the suit or whatever. But what did you think of this scene? I literally have no thoughts. I actually don't know why Kale showed up.
I have so many thoughts, actually. Good. I'm delighted. Okay. So a few things. So first, I have kind of a silly, slightly sarcastic thought, which is, hey, for those of you who wanted a hallway scene, here's your badass hallway scene. Okay.
But they don't want a woman to be fighting Kale.
Yeah, but that's not the thing. That's not who the badass was in the scene. It was Kale was the badass. So, but no, okay. So here's what was happening here. Jade seeing the vision of her mother killed. We're meant to assume that Kale killed her, that he's responsible for that. You've got Jade obviously experiencing survivor's guilt and everything. She has, based on what she told Kit earlier, we understand that she has transferred some of these feelings about her mother to Sorsha because Sorsha took her in after this happened. It also leads me to believe that she's definitely a little bit older than Kit because she was a casualty, or her family was a casualty of Bavmorda and Kale's sort of reign of terror, where they were going around and killing everyone. Because this was an attack that would have happened. But here's the thing that I'm wondering. The sword that Kit has is her mother's sword. It's Sorsha's sword. Sorsha's sword is the same one she had in the film. And if you look closely, Kale and Sorsha have the same style of sword. And then there's also the arrows. We know that Kit uses arrows. Sorsha used arrows. And so I'm looking at this and I'm going, did Sorsha kill Jade's mother before she turned?
Oh, no.
Right?
Maybe. Oh,
Yeah.
no.
What kind of conflict would that create?
Oh, no. It could have happened.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if Jade was too little, like, to really know, right?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, no.
Right?
That would be cool.
So it would be. So yeah. So she's, dealing with the specter of death, but also what it is it's really, it's misty and everything. She can't see well. It is the unknown. She's dealing with these memories of her past, which are not really clear to her, and her unresolved mother issues. And we know, again, Kit is having mommy issues, and Alora is having mommy issues. Jade is having mommy issues too. So this is where I think, again, if we're talking about what is going to sort of separate the lovers here, what is going to be the challenge for the courtly lesbians? And I think, Kit worrying
that would be so hard to overcome for Jade, who is loyal and not really going anywhere in her original, piece of having to go to Galadorn is on pause right now and has time to resolve. But if it turns out that Sorsha, Kit's mother, actually killed her mother and family, wow.
Yeah. So those are my thoughts on that scene. And I actually really love that scene. I think it gave Jade a lot of depth. And then, of course, it leads to her barricading herself in, I guess, what is the kitchen or the cupboard again. And then we get back to Alora.
Yes. Who is blown away. She's like, I can't believe I hear that voice. Mm-hmm. And she follows it down the stairs. Again, this is descent.
Yes.
Into the darkness, descent into the goddess, right? So, oh man, I have so many thoughts about this. So she walks down the hallway and, the hallway torches just light up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
She sort of has this like power already about her. It's like in the way that the people talk about Arthur as the once and future king. Like she is the goddess, even though she's like kind of in this formative state.
She is, but also this place calls to her. It's meant for her. It invites her in. It welcomes her.
Well, it is hers. That's the thing. Like.
And she acknowledges that later.
She does. And what did I say last episode?
Yeah, you said this. You said she'd be like, I was born here. And then she said exactly that in this episode. And I was like, man, Marie Claire called it.
I also said she was going to meet her mother.
Yeah. Yes.
So she goes in.
I asked you already, but what is it like to be right all the time, Marie Claire?
It's really weird. Like, am I this smart or is the writing this good? I don't know.
Spoilers, you're really that smart.
Oh, thanks. She sees Bavmorda, who is her dark mother, ever so briefly, but then turns the corner and sees her real mother, who's saying she's, my baby will finish her. Like she's that line from the movie that we hear, and then we see her and she sees Alora.
Oh my gosh. This just hit me.
They got the actress and they recorded the new lines. And they used B-roll. And they made this happen. I'm blown away by the wizardry of Lucasfilm.
Yes.
Okay, can we just take a moment? This is a way to use nostalgia for the benefit of the story. I am so friggin' proud of these storytellers.
Yes. Yes. Because it wasn't about what it meant to the audience. It was about what it meant to the character. And that's why it works.
Absolutely. And so we hear her say, I see her. She's here. She's grown up, fierce and resilient. She is the beacon of light in the time of dread. Okay, so this is really, really important because in this exact moment, we have past Alora, like the child, just the past happening, the present happening, and the future happening all in the same breath. That's like big goddess stuff. You are everything.
And it was so beautifully done because you can tell. That's the thing. You can tell. They had no need to express it to you in some way. You can tell that her mother is seeing her.
Yeah. And
that they see each other. And that's so, I'm getting emotional. It's so beautiful. This is the kind of mother-child, but especially mother-daughter relationship that I have wanted from Star Wars for so long. And they gave it to us here in Willow.
Even momentarily, even though the character ends up just dying anyways, of course, right? But it's still perfect.
It is. It's so beautifully done. Like, bravo.
And this is what induces the heroine, who is now kind of at the lowest low, literally in the castle and figuratively in her journey, seeing her mother die. And the heroine is yearns to reconnect with the feminine aspects of herself and others. And this is huge because where does she immediately go after?
She goes to find Graydon.
Because femininity is also awakening sexuality in the heroine's journey at this point.
And he's like partially shirtless when she shows up, because of course he is.
So she's like, I have the hots for Graydon, without having to say that. We know this because of how he's presented in a sense of vulnerability. This is like Kylo being shirtless in The Last Jedi. Happy anniversary, Last Jedi. And it's exactly in that sort of vibe, the awakening sexuality of a woman.
Oh my gosh, that's so cool. I'm sorry. It makes me so happy.
And so it's like, it's sexuality, it's nurturing, it's caring for others, it's all of those things.
Yes, it's everything.
Those feelings are awoken in women who descend to the goddess and are successful and leave, right? They're able to leave because they've learned the knowledge of their true selves.
All right.
And that
makes me happy.
They can't do things the way that the patriarchy tells them to do things. That's also really key.
Yes.
She learns that lesson.
Right. And we'll get to that. But then I think before all of that happens, so we cut back to Jade again, kind of barricading the door. And
Borman shows up.
Well, but first she backs away from the door and she encounters Kit, and they're both agreeing that something's really weird about this castle and everything, right? And then they hear Borman outside, and this leads to my favorite Kit and Jade moment of the entire episode. Wait, maybe second favorite, because there's a moment right after it that's also very good. But where
that's also great. Yeah, of course.
Yes. So Borman's at the door, and the two of them are like, well, tell us something only the real Borman would know. And he says, you two totally have the hots for each other. And I love this so much because they deny it, but they also accept that answer as valid, which means they admit it.
It's great.
I loved it. It was wonderful.
I've also heard the ship name or seen the ship name Tanthalos Moor?
Tanthamor. Because it's Tanthalos and Claymore are their last names. So Tanthamor. So I've seen Tanthamor. I like that one out of the other sort of name combination ship names. I think Tanthamor is good. I still like Courtly Lesbians as well, but it's not catching on, and that's okay.
It's okay. It's too on the nose.
It is. It is. But yeah, so he busts in and he's kind of losing his mind about the Lux Arcana. Where is it? He's flipping out and everything. And he, he really kind of gets in Kit's face, and he's kind of, pushing her back. He's gripping her by the collar and everything. And Jade comes in and, please remove your grubby hands from my princess.
Oh my God, so good.
My princess. Well then.
It's so good. I'm loving this. Like you were complaining last episode. You're like, there hasn't been enough.
No, there wasn't. They were lacking angst. They were lacking flirtation. It was just kind of like it was not going anywhere. And I was like, we need more. And so we got so much in this episode, and it makes me so happy. We got such a nice range too. They had very sweet, poignant moments together.
Mm-hmm.
They snarked at each other. And then we have this where they're like,
and they both draw their swords and are working well together.
Yes, that's right. Battle couple again. That's right. So we very, very well fed in that regard. This episode, I was so delighted, and that's part of the reason why this episode is so fun to watch, is because we're getting Kit and Jade and Alora and Graydon, and just so much for both of them, and it's just a delight to watch.
And that's a great segue into Alora showing up to Graydon.
To partially shirtless Graydon.
Partially shirtless Graydon. And him asking her to put on, to tie up his shirt. Yes. Okay. So he's explaining the situation, which seems tenuous at best.
You can tell. You can tell as soon as she walks in. As the audience, we're like, oh, he's clearly still.
We know he's still possessed. But also, this is hot.
It is so hot. And she's so worried about him. She's sort of marveling at his safety. You're okay. And
yeah. And then they have an over 3 second stare into each other's eyes.
They do. That's nice and long.
Love. They love each other.
They do. They
do. It's so good. Okay, let's talk about clothing somebody like him.
Oh my gosh. All right, I'm excited. All right, there's so much going on with clothing. And this is important too, because Graydon actually has several layers of clothing, or skin, as you might say here. So Graydon he's got sort of who he is on the inside, who Graydon is. So when Alora says to him later, I know you're still in there, Graydon, that's who she's referring to. She's referring to him independently of any skins or clothing he may have on him. Then there is the layer, which is the scarring, which is, this is the skin which represents his shadow, his past, and his, the pain. And
I would say it's very similar to Kylo's mask.
Yes,
in some
absolutely.
ways. It's defensive in some ways, and also protective, because he does. And if the shadow he's wearing it, he can avoid dealing with it.
A mask is always a form of a beastly skin. Yes. Yeah. So totally valid. Absolutely. But this is one sort of type of skin that he has is the scarring. Then we have the skin, which is when he is possessed by the Lich, regardless of whether that displays visually or not, because it does later, but here it doesn't. But
you can hear it a little bit in his voice when he starts talking right at the start.
Right.
There's a weird vibration to his voice.
Like a reverb.
Beautiful sound design.
No, it's Willow really team. Well done. Amazing. Yeah, so well done. And so it's there, but the point is that regardless of how it manifests, when he's being possessed, that's another skin that he has, another beastly skin. And then, of course, last but not least, is the clothing. Clothing is hugely important. Clothing implies possession. It implies ownership. When one lover clothes another, they are claiming them. They are saying, this one's mine.
And we speculated that at some point he might provide a jacket to her, which is a whole different thing. But let's talk about beastly skin first. What does that mean, Missy? What does it mean to have beastly skin? Where do we even start?
Okay. So beastly skin. So any person in a story. So it's not always necessarily romances, but it's frequently used in romances because obviously then you have the two opposing forces, and one is typically removing the skin from the other or putting it on, as the case may be.
It's magical transformation.
It is. It's magical transformation. But what's interesting about it is it always implies that whatever form is on the outside is not the true form. So whether you have someone who is appearing to be human, but is in fact a beast, or the other way around, appearing to be a beast, but is in fact human, you have the beastly skin, which must be either returned to the person or stripped away from them. And in many cases, consumed by fire and completely destroyed.
Really good example that most people will be familiar with is Beauty and the Beast.
Yes. So you strip away the beastly skin to reveal the human underneath.
A real life person that only plays roles that are like this is Nicholas Hoult.
Oh, yeah. You're so right.
He only plays humans that happen to be monsters or monsters that are human.
Mm-hmm.
It's wild.
That's so cool. But yeah, so there's so many things happening in this, you know, there is, you know, the beastly skins coming on, coming off. There's the fact that Allura is clothing him in a way, which means that she is claiming him. And there's the fact that she's tying him. And we've talked before about the importance of tying and ropes.
It's interesting. Like he was untying her before and now she's tying him.
Yeah. And he asked her to. And it's funny because it's like, yes, he's possessed, but it's also very evident that the Lich's thoughts and desires are definitely blended with the real Graydon's.
Yeah, he's in there. He definitely is, because it comes out later too.
Yes, exactly.
And he holds her hand and they run out of the room. Oh my
and
gosh.
They figure out where to go. They decide to go to the tower and she's going to lead. And he says, but how do you know where it is? And then
she says, I was born here.
Which means this is mine.
I own this place.
That's right.
Yeah. And so like there's this is like a very George Lucas thing to say the micro experience of Allura means the macro experience of the castle. Same with the micro experience of Allura's heroic adventurer's journey. Also will equate to Allura saving the world. Yes.
So good. So good. We're getting to my favorite parts of this episode.
They're adorable together, even though we know he's evil. I don't know. I love them. I've already seen so many great fan edits. I want more. I'm going to probably make one, but I'm not very good at them. So I'll try.
And I'm feeling the same way about fan art. I'm like, we need more Grey Laura fan art. But, you know, like, I don't know. If people aren't going to do it, I'm going to have to do it. And I don't know what's going to happen, but I'll do my best.
It'll be fine.
I know. But yeah, so they get upstairs and then, you know, very quickly is revealed that, Graydon is still possessed. We know this. And the best thing that comes out of this immediately after the revelation is the fact that he shows he's jealous of Eric.
Yes.
Because he thinks she's attracted to his confidence and strength.
This is what you want.
Yes.
Confidence, strength. It's what Eric has.
Yes.
What, Graydon? Did you just confess?
Yes, you just admitted. I know.
Borman, Jade, and Kit had spotted them running up the tower. I love the line from Jade. We're not going to fall for that old chestnut. Like, look at the tower.
Yeah, and Kit totally does. And I love this, by the way, just in general, in terms of Kit and Jade's dynamic. They're so funny because Kit's always like not thinking at all and just kind of rushing headlong into whatever. Like she just like, even at the beginning when she was like, we could totally kill Graydon. And Jade's like, he's a prince of Galador and we'd be at war. Like, as in like, simmer down. That's a terrible idea. And so she does this all the time. She's always being like the responsible adult and Kit's like, yeah, let's go. It's great. So they run up after them. And then we get Willow coming in to this Graydon Allura showdown and going, you are the worst apprentice ever.
Yes.
And this is so important because he doesn't have faith in her. He doesn't believe in her. And he thinks that the reason that she fails is because she's not like him.
Yep.
That's the only way that he knows how to do magic is the way that he does it.
And
she can't possibly have another way.
It's the way that Finn Rizal taught him.
Yes.
Right? So it has to be the right way. Right? But it's really, really important that the truth is you have to find your own path. Right.
Yes.
So he shows up and Graydon, like Snoke-esque, has like pulled her across the room.
And then it's so hot though. It's so hot.
This is very good. And then like she like kind of like get like her eyes, like the vision from last episode, Willow had her eyes go all white and she's kind of being like sucked up as but Graydon pulls out Willow's shadow and puts it on full display. Bavmorda was thwarted through her own carelessness. So we see baby Allura. We see the whole scene reenacted right in front of her, which is really, really important for Allura to see, right? This is her shadow as well, that somebody wanted to kill her, even as an innocent baby. There are people that hated her so much that they wanted to kill her. And she was protected. Like, this is all important stuff, but it doesn't show her exactly all of the things that happened, only kind of selectively trying to poke at Willow, as well as kind of showing her loneliness on the altar.
Mm-hmm.
And that retains, like, she sees the baby on the altar almost at the same time as Willow seeing the other pieces, because it's everybody's shadows on display. That sense of loneliness and not feeling like anybody cares about her.
Yeah, but it's also, it's that still clinging to maidenhood is what it is.
Yep.
It's as long as she associates with the baby version of herself, she's not ready to become the hero.
No.
Yeah. So it's an extraordinary scene. And once again, I also want to point out that the effects team did such an incredible job here. I don't know if I've ever seen blending of scenes from another piece of media the way this did. It was so beautifully done. I don't think seamless is the right word. Artistic is a better word. It's just adapted so beautifully to work in this scene and in the context. It's really lovely. A lot of my favorite shots of this episode, and probably of the whole series so far, are in this sequence. I just think there's so many beautiful moments.
So good. And we have, how will you defeat us? Because, like, Willow's hurt. He's taken so much psychic damage from this situation.
Yeah.
Right? Like, and he's like, how will you defeat us? And Willow says, the same as last time with my friends. And we see Rizal and Sorsha show up. And then behind them, when we saw this in the trailer and we were like, what is this scene?
Yeah.
But it was so good.
It worked so well. And again, to your point from earlier, this is the proper use of nostalgia, because you understand the roles these characters play because we're associating them with legacy characters. But at the same time, they are their own characters. We've seen them now going on their own journey. So we're not going to confuse them with these characters. They're not just,
and they're shadows, right? They're not taking the focus away from the humans on stage.
Yes.
They're just shadows. They're reflections. They're things you need to consider along your own journey. Mm-hmm. Awesome.
Yes. Yeah. And, so good.
So immediately Jade and Borman start trying violence on Graydon, right? Like, they beat him down, and literally Borman's on top of him, beating the crap
punching
out of him.
I know.
And Kit, sees, wait a second, we can't actually kill him. She comes to this realization. This is so huge. All of the, love and compassion for their comrade is actually what's important. She sees sort of Allura lost in her own sense of loneliness and attachment to her child phase, and she comes over and she's like, you can't help her, but you can help Graydon. And she tells her the truth. You grew the eckleberry bush. It was beautiful.
Gosh.
It was beautiful. Oh. I need you to get your shit together.
Yeah. And save Graydon.
And use it to save Graydon. And she's like, I don't know how. She's like, throw out the recipe. Cooking reference.
Yes. Yeah, because she understands. She understands that is Allura's power.
And this is her becoming the trifold goddess in her own way in one moment. So she is the maiden. She sees the needs of being a mother to protect others and do what she needs to do from a compassion and love perspective. And then she becomes the crone.
I love it. I love it.
Okay. So this is so okay. So she is like, oh, okay, I need to go over there. And immediately Willow's like, Allura, don't you dare.
Yep. Don't
Damn
you
it,
dare.
Allura.
Tells her no.
Don't you dare. But you and I have been on this all day. Defiance is necessary to become a hero, to get those next stages, to leave your parents.
Yep. Yes. And that's where I want to pause before we talk about the final moment, which we love so much. But before we talk about that, I want to go back to what we talked about at the beginning of the episode on our Maiden to Mage conversation. Alora's about to make the shift from Maiden to hero. And remember, she had the 3 archetypes that she had to break, parent or mentor archetypes she had to break away from. And they were the too good mother, the naive father, and the predator. Mm-hmm. So we're going to see all 3 of those literally within the same moment. And she breaks away from them in different ways. First, the too good mother. She just encountered her mother, just encountered her minutes before. And now she sees herself as a baby there without that mother who has died.
But she's still her mother.
Right. She needs her mother. She's still clinging to that mother, even though she's long dead. But she sees the baby. She needs her mother. But notice she doesn't say, I need my mother. She says she needs her mother, which is how then Kit is able to come in and say, you can't help her, but you can help Graydon. So she encourages her to associate not with the child, the dependent, but with the mother, the parent, the
caring person,
partner.
Yeah.
Right. They care. And so in that moment, she breaks away from the too good mother. Then Willow says, don't you dare. The naive father who believes that she can't do it, that she's not powerful, that she can't do magic, she can't figure this out. And it's him saying that makes her suddenly defiant, like, well, how dare you? Like, she's just offended that he would tell her not to do this. And so then she's just done with that. So that's like an open teenage defiance kind of breaking away. And then last but not least, the predator. And she literally walks over to Graydon, who is the predator, and eats him. And eats him. Ow!
So this comes into this retrieval aspect of shadow, right? So in Robert Bly's book, where he explores the Jungian concepts and retrieving shadows from those that you've projected them on, he says that the way we retrieve shadows is we go up to people that hold them and we ask for them back and we eat them. We eat them. That's how we retrieve them. And then they become part of us. And archetypically, the mother feeds, but the witch eats. And this is where she ended up being all 3 aspects in the same moment as well. How did they do that?
I don't know. It's so good. There's so much thought put into this, and yet it's so simple and direct.
And so good. Not only do we see that she is eating the shadow, like sucking it out of him in a healing way, because it's also associated with the kiss of life, right? Which is, from a fairy tale perspective, you've seen it before. So Sleeping Beauty's kiss or other kisses that bring people back from the dead, right? Kiss of life. That's what that is. But it's also a consumption kiss. It's also eating of the magic of the world. It's also regaining of your power. Okay, what does that involve for Graydon? He has this vision that she sees of his childhood and what happened to his brother and to him. And yeah, his brother fell out of a tree because Graydon pushed him.
Because he clearly had encountered dark magic before that.
Yeah, because of something, and probably something to do with his father. So we have like sins of the father in Graydon, right? Okay, so when you take back a shadow, when you reclaim it, the energy of that shadow makes you become more whole. And in that moment, Alora's one lock of hair turns to orange. Orange is symbolically the balance between the here and after. It is the spirit and sexuality. It is virginity and fertility. It is, in a way, the mask of the goddess.
Oh my gosh.
Cool. I have a great quote from Robert Bly. The person who has eaten his shadow spreads calmness and shows more grief than anger. If the ancients were right, that darkness contains intelligence, nourishment, and even information, then the person who has eaten some of his or her shadow is more energetic as well as intelligent. It regained power.
Ugh, it's so cool. I also have a quote, actually.
She has some darkness in her too,
yes,
which is good.
She does.
Yeah.
Yes. Oh, I love it. So I also have a quote because to me, it kind of sums up the whole journey that Elora went on up until this point in the series, but also just in this episode specifically. So this one is from the Women Who Run with the Wolves, Clarissa Pinkola Estes. We talk about it all the time. Read it if you haven't. But it says the Maiden represents the heartfelt and formerly sleepy psyche, but a warrior heroine lies beneath her soft exterior. She has the endurance of the lone wolf. She is able to bear the dirt, grime, betrayal, hurt, loneliness, and exile of the initiate. She is able to wander the underworld and return enriched to the topside world.
Yes. So it's almost like you get stripped away. Like that's really this point is like the old self gets stripped away, very snake-like, but and you become new, you become reborn and refreshed and etc. And at that exact same moment, the storm disappears. The vortex is dissipated. So
it looks like she's releasing what she drew out of him up into the vortex.
Into the vortex. So
she's almost like feeding it with it's like she's feeding it with the shadow in a way.
Yeah. Wild. I don't even know. It's so mind-blowing. And then Graydon looks up at her with like love.
Awe and wonder and love. Yes.
Never doubted you for a second. And she's just like, what the hell did I just witness?
Yes.
I love this angst so much. We're going to get so much angst. And she likes him.
She does.
But she's like, that's not why I like Eric, because he's strong and confident. But no, you like
she's really going to have a crisis, because that's the thing, is that he sort of acknowledged his attraction to her from the beginning. She's only just now starting to get a hint of the fact that it's mutual.
I mean, this was such an important episode because we got this descent into the goddess, which it basically creates and allows her to become a sexual being. And we got that.
Well, she's becoming it's like what you said, she's becoming all parts of this. And she is becoming.
It's about her becoming whole. And when we talk about the micro meeting the macro wholeness, when she becomes whole, so does the world. The world heals, And we see that she takes on an aspect of his shadow, which she has given him, and has integrated it into herself. She becomes more of a whole person, and thus the community is healed. The castle is no longer dark and scary as it once was. The vortex is no longer existing. It's a sunshiny, beautiful morning.
Yep.
Wow. I thought they were going to end the episode there.
Oh my God, and then it gets better.
Okay, let's finish this sucker out. They're walking away. I love that Borman's like, yeah, it wasn't so bad.
Yeah. Like, it's fun. And then he also he finds the Lux again, so he comes to realize that it was an illusion. So he's now tipped his hand to to the rest of them, where they know that he has the Lux. So it is going to
forest. So I think we're going to get those scenes with the forest
Scorpia
and the butterfly. And all sorts of fun stuff. So yeah.
Well, I think, and we know we're headed towards Borman having some kind of confrontation. So that whatever he's been avoiding, whatever he's been avoiding is coming for him.
That's good, because he needs to be. Everybody else had their shadows like fully yelled at them.
Yeah,
he ran away from his shadows.
He's completely avoided it. Yeah,
totally. they ask Willow about the blood of the six. They were the six fays that betrayed the mothers to serve the dark power. That means that Bavmorda was one of the blood of the six. So I have it and Eric has it. She immediately jumps to that conclusion, which is amazing. All right, let's talk about the number 6. All right. There's 6 fae and 6 Willow friends now that Silas is dead. I'm just going to be paying attention to the number 6 because it's popped up twice now. It's interesting.
Yeah.
It means the 4 elements plus from an alchemical perspective above and below. It is one of the things that connects us to, say, the earth and the 4 elements are in the middle, and there is the past and the future of the conscious self. This is to say, more of the universe. I don't know what this all means yet, but I'm looking forward to hearing people's thoughts.
I mean, just a thought. We know that 7 is also an important number, but in a different way. And that 7 usually indicates wholeness. 6 does not, typically speaking. In fact, in the
So we're saying that this group can't be whole without Eric.
Exactly. Eric is still needed in order for them to be whole. And we know that Alora represents that kind of nexus. She's actually the 7th.
Yes.
Because the rest of them are, fire, earth, air, water, and then past and future. Yeah. And then Alora is all. Yeah. So she is the, all-encompassing goddess. So I think we're still headed towards 7 eventually. But yeah, for now we have 6, which is just not as whole, not as stable. It's missing something. It's incomplete.
So it's interesting because the characters that we have are all actually family in the end. So Willow is one of Alora's parents and like an uncle to Kit. And Jade is Kit's bride, future bride. Borman is effectively Kit's uncle.
Yep. Yes.
Alora and Kit are siblings in a way.
Yep.
Eric is a sibling.
Yeah.
And once Graydon marries Alora, they're all family.
Yeah. This is what found family actually means.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love it.
Well, it'll be neat to see.
We have this amazing look from a very in love and in awe Graydon and Alora, and she looks like
terrified.
Worried.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wait a second.
Yeah.
It's going to be so good. There's going to be so much angst.
I know. We're going to have a good time. We're going to have a great time.
We get the crone talking to the Gales. Take the girl, kill the others.
And it's interesting because...
Which girl?
Well, no, I think she does mean Alora, but the question is, at what point did she become aware of her? That's what I want to know.
When the Lich was talking about, or which one was Alora? Are you saying
because the
Lich was talking last episode that she had, or in the second episode that she had left her bubble or whatever.
Yeah, but they hadn't tried to target her specifically.
No, they hadn't
prior to this. So something
maybe it was because
shifted.
she defeated the vortex and she has to go about a different way, right?
That might be it. Yeah, they were just planning on. Okay, that makes sense.
That would make sense. They were just planning on shoving her up the vortex, right? They could get, like you go to your nightmare region. You go to the 13th night.
Yeah, you're just gonna suck her up like Dorothy.
But now it's probably turned into a Dark Union scenario.
Oh God, it's gonna be so fun. We're gonna have the best time. Whoa, which takes us to that final scene now. Let's talk about this last scene.
Eric wakes up in a cell.
Yes.
He's like, hello.
And remember, when the Lich possessing Graydon was pretending to be Eric, he said, I'm in a cell. It's hot.
Yeah.
And this is important because when Eric leaves the cell and starts wandering around, it's a city of ash.
Yeah.
It's been burned.
Yeah.
It's been consumed.
And we hear Black Hole Sun in a piano version, this was the best implemented.
It was. All right. I complained last episode. I did, but I have to say, the difference in instrumentation makes all the
piano is
I'm repeating myself.
Really good way to bring
it worked so well.
Slow piano, in my eyes, indisposed, in disguise, no one knows, hides a face, lies the snake in the sun, in my disgrace. Boiling heat, summer stench, 'neath the black, the sky looks dead. Call my name through the cream, and I'll hear you scream again. Black hole sun, won't you come and wash away the rain? Yeah. Okay.
Oh my God. I'm freaking out a little. Yeah, I really liked it. I
actually think that this is the crone.
Yeah?
It's very crone-like for her.
I like your young, beautiful crone theory. I think I'm slowly coming on board to it.
And there is black sun in alchemy.
Oh?
Yeah. From an alchemy perspective, it's associated with the idea that there's always an equal and opposite in all things. So if there's a good sun, there's also a black sun.
Got it.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So it's to say that there is a destructive force that is as powerful as anything that Allura could create.
It also could be, similar to your point about Fibonacci, fib, could also be a homophone in that sun, just like in the sequel trilogy, when they refer to the sun, if you only believe in it when you can see it, you'll never make it through the night. And the sun that they're talking about is Ben Solo, her son. So that could be the other thing, is Eric is the sun.
Is the sun, yeah.
Yeah.
The black hole sun.
The black hole sun, that's right, because they're going to try to corrupt him.
Because he'll be corrupted and then become the Dark Union thing that wants to possess Allura.
Yep.
Maybe.
Oh my God, this is going to be so good.
It's very sexy on all angles.
Very sexy. Oh, not one, but two dark hot guys that want her. What more could you ask for?
Happily ever after with one of them.
Yes, please.
The right one, Graydon.
The right one, Graydon. Yeah.
How you feeling? How we doing?
Oh my gosh, I'm just so excited. I'm so delighted by this episode. It's great stuff.
It's given. I don't know. It was like they read my mind, had been listening to the podcast and said, you know, we're going to make this for Marie Claire.
Specifically for Marie Claire.
Built in a lab just for me. It's wild.
See, so many people, that's what's so funny though, is so many people have been saying exactly that, which is why I find it so fascinating, because it's not niche. It is universal. That's what's great about it. And so I'm just really, really happy that there's a good familiarity with fairy tales and folklore and mythology and how to use these archetypes and motifs in a way that is deliberate and with a intent to tell a revealing and positive story.
So far, they haven't used the Cthulhu mythos in any way but to instill the otherness of the shadow, which I'm okay with, actually. If that's what it's going to be, I'm okay with it. And I am just absolutely blown away. I actually got very teary in the moment that she ate his shadow.
Aww.
It was pretty emotional for me. This episode actually seen some things where they care so much and they care enough to tell the story with, yes, use of this old film and use of these old characters and use of this old thing. But now that they're past the Shadow Castle, it's not going to come back again unless they're facing something that a character needs, like potentially Mad Mardigan, like Sorsha, like, you know, Bavmorda coming back in a way, right? But it's not going to be the focus. The focus is on the heroes that we have here and now.
Yeah.
It's so good.
I'm really curious to see what happens. Oh, and so here's the last thing. To the extent that I want to do any speculation whatsoever.
We try not to.
I try not to, because the thing is, listen, I'm just really enjoying the story they're telling.
Same.
It can be fun to see where certain things are going, especially when they're really broadcasting it very clearly. But generally speaking, I just enjoy kind of going in every week and then, discovering something new. But that said, sort of jumping off of the concept I said earlier about what if Sorsha is responsible for Jade's mother's death. Also thinking about Kit, trying to think of, oh shoot, if Eric's going to be corrupted and I could be corrupted because of my blood, how am I going to save him? And then obviously Allura stands a significant chance of being corrupted as well. We still have Graydon, who, in spite of, resolving this particular issue, there's still darkness that needs to be resolved there. So
he hasn't shaved off his evil goatee yet. And that's the signal for us, because we know that happens at some point.
Although, as card-carrying member of Team Beard, I'm going to be sad to see the facial hair go.
He's growing it back. He grows it back.
I know.
It's just, he needs to be reborn.
I get it.
It's a symbolic meaning, Missy.
I know. It's another beastly skin, and I get it. But, no, I don't want that. He's going to be
a newborn baby, and then he's going to rest his head in the lap of the goddess again.
I know.
It'll be good.
But here's my thought, is that, so given all of that, I wonder if we will at some point flash back to Sorsha. What is she doing while they're on this journey? What's going on with her?
Has she gotten sick?
Yep. How is she feeling about, her sort of her feeling of failures? Because again, to go back to kind of those first couple episodes, especially the first one, Sorsha was a major POV character for a while. Mm-hmm. We followed her as she went down to confront Borman. We followed her as she heard the whispers that the Gales were coming. So her perspective was hugely important. I don't believe that we've left that behind for good. She also, because she's the one that sent Valentine after Allura, she also plays all three roles to Allura of the parent or mentor that was holding her back. She was the too good mother because she was the Snow Queen trying to protect her. She was the naive father because she, didn't want to allow her to acknowledge her, to train with Willow. And she was the predator because, again, she's the one that sent Valentine out. So she is the one that sent the predator after Allura. So she is all three of those as well.
Interesting.
So here's what I'm thinking. And she plays that role similarly, frankly, to all of them, all of our maidens, same role. So here's my thought. What if we get toward the end? And the whole thing is we got to save Eric, and we're saving Eric and everything. It works out. So, and because they still want the blood of the six, you can't have Kit. You can't have Kit. You can't have Eric. We're going after Sorsha.
If they end it like that season.
Yes, end of the season. They're coming for Sorsha. And then that gives an opening for however they want to reintroduce Madmart again, since there's conversation about his role being different in future seasons if they were to happen. There you go.
Oh, I love it. My heart swelled. Three sizes. Yeah.
So we'll see. But
oh, Missy, I am loving doing this show with you.
This is so much fun.
It's so much fun. You're great. Mm-hmm. This is great. I love our audience and how engaged they are, how they reach out to us. And
this episode got a lot of new people to watch the show.
Oh yeah, and I'm really excited to see more people get into the show and get to this episode and just have their minds blown that this is possible. Mm-hmm. This was better than a lot of shows I've seen. This episode was just better than a lot of shows I've seen this year. That's wild.
Ugh, so good.
So good. Okay, we're gonna sign off. Missy, where can people find you if they're looking for you online?
You can find me on Tumblr at All Girls Are Princesses.
Thank you, everyone, for listening to the show. Remember to submit your comments in the form in the liner notes if you have any. And we will be back next week with another Following Willow. Cheers.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to What the Force. I'm Marie-Claire Gould, your host. Our music is provided by Christy Carew for What the Force. We have a Patreon at patreon.com/whattheforce. We would like to thank all our patrons, especially those who love and are obsessed with What the Force. Melody, Night Huntress, In Wild Space, How Rude, Anna Perez, Neil, Joe Allen D, Christian Luca, Josh Johnson, Scott C, and Susan. Make sure to like and subscribe on YouTube or leave a 5-star review on iTunes or other pod apps. It helps people find the show. Check out our other channel on YouTube, What the Fiction. You can connect with us on Twitter at WT Force Show, What the Force Podcast on Facebook, and our website, whattheforce.ca. We also have a Discord. Links are in the liner notes. Feel free to reach out and start a conversation. Cheers.